Today we are going to look at perfect squares and square roots. We're going to start out with the square of an integer is called a perfect square. Okay. We're going to generate the first 10 perfect squares below. 1 squared means 1 times 1, which is 1. 2 squared means 2 times 2, which is 4. 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is 9. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. And 9 squared is 81. Lastly, 10 squared is 100. So remember, when you're taking the square, when you're squaring a number, you're multiplying it by itself. Now let's look at square roots. The square root is the opposite of squaring a number. That is called the square root. Positive numbers have 2 square roots. Why is that? Okay, well, what number or numbers can you square to get 16? If you do 4 times 4, you will get positive 16. Also, if you square negative 4 times negative 4, you will also get positive 16. That is why positive numbers have 2 square roots. Negative numbers, on the other hand, have no square roots. Eventually in high school, you will discuss that there is imaginary numbers, but for now, negative numbers, you cannot take the square root of them. Okay, what number has only 1 square root? And that would be 0, because the only way to get 0 is 0 times 0. And 0 is not positive and it is not negative. The radical sign is what we use to indicate the square root of a number. Okay, when we just see the square root of x, it is used to indicate the positive square root. If you see a negative sign in front of the square root, that is going to be the negative square root of x. So now let's look at some of these examples. What number times itself gives me 49? This is where knowing those times tables are going to come in handy. 7. It could be a positive 7 or a negative 7. That's how you show it could be both answers. Number 2, the square root of 9 is 3. It could be a positive 3 or a negative 3. Then we have the negative square root of 4. So again, here the square root of 4 would be 2, and I'm just going to make it negative. Next, we have the negative square root of 289. Well, the square root of 289 is 17, and we're going to make it negative. Next, the negative square root of 196. So if we use your calculator and you do the square root of 196, it will give you 19, and we're going to make it negative. Oops, I meant to say 14. The square root of 484 is 22. Now, because they didn't put a negative sign, I can also say it could be positive or negative. When you're taking the square root of a fraction, you're going to do them separately. You're going to say to yourself, what's the square root of 1? 1. What's the square root of 16? 4. And you're done. And again, there could be a plus or a minus sign in front of that one as well. The next one, it's going to be negative. And then we're going to take the square root of 81, which is 9, and the square root of 25, which is 5. And finally, the last example, the square root of 49 is 7. Square root of 144 is 12. And again, we could put a plus and a minus sign in front of it. Okay, so now we're going to discuss the difference between a perfect square versus a non-perfect square. A perfect square means you will get a whole number as your answer when you take the square root, not a decimal. So 9 I know is a perfect square. You can use your list above up here. Everything in that list there will show you your perfect squares. Some you may have to memorize or use your calculator to find as well. So I want you to circle the perfect square numbers. Next, we're going to estimate non-perfect squares. So we're going to look at the square root of 10. I notice that the square root of 10 would be somewhere between the square root of 9 and the square root of 16. But it would definitely be closer to 9. So if I had to guess, I would say about 3.1. That would be my guess. We are estimating these. Okay, then I'm going to look at the square root of 115. Now, I didn't finish writing these, which you may want to finish writing these. We know that after square root of 81 comes square root of 100. Okay, but 115 is bigger than that. So after 100 comes 121. So I know that the square root of 115 is going to be in between these two numbers. So I know the square root of 100 is 10. So I know it's going to be 10 point, and then I just have to figure out, is 15 closer to 100 or 115 closer to 100 or 121? It is closer to 121, so I'm going to guess 10.7. Then I'm going to look at number 12. Number 12 is the square root of 59. Well, that goes in between the square root of 49 and the square root of 64. So I know that's going to be 7 point something. And I would say that 59 is definitely closer to 64. So I'm going to say it's over the halfway point again. I'm going to say 7.6. Then we can always check these on our calculators. The square root of 41, and then we're going to put a negative sign in front of it when we're done, is in between 36 and 49. Therefore, it's going to be 6 point something. And it's actually a little bit closer to 36, so I'm going to say 6.4 and then throw my negative sign. The square root of 3 is going to be in between 1 and 4, and it's actually a little bit closer to 4. So I know it's going to be negative, don't forget, because there's a negative sign, 1 point, I'm going to guess 1.8. And then lastly, the square root of negative 206. See if you can figure that one out. Next, I'd like you to estimate the square roots of 16, 17, and 18. And then use your calculator to check these. Next, we're going to look at perfect cubes. What do I mean by a perfect cube? The cube of an integer is called a perfect cube. 1 cubed means 1 times 1 times 1, which of course is 1. 2 cubed means 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. 3 cubed means 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. 4 cubed means 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. 5 cubed is 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. I made it a little bit neater. 6 cubed is 216. 7 cubed is 343. 8 cubed is 512. 9 cubed is 729. And 10 cubed is 1,000. The opposite of cubing a number is finding the cubed root of a number. All integers have 1 cube root. Why is that? Well, if you look at the number 8, if you want to find the cube root of 8, it would be 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, if you want to find what number can you cube to get negative 8, you would have to do negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. The radical sign with the little 3 here is used to indicate the cubed root. So I'd like you now to find the cubed root of these numbers. Some you may want to use your calculator to do as well.